The year is 1967. The scene, London. The Who are about to release their latest single, a song which begins with the lyric, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." And it seems that for Britain, this really could be the motto for the times. As the country prepares to enter the new era of Wilsonian socialism under Harold Wilson's Labour government, much of the rest of the world is also preparing to enter a new era, but not one of socialism. No, all across the globe, from Kenya to Singapore, from South Africa to New Zealand, right across the world, new leaders and new governments are preparing to take over from the old guard who have been in power since before they were even born. Across the world, the British Empire is preparing to pass the baton and prepare for a quiet retirement. But what if that never happened? What if the British Empire not only never fell, but somehow managed to stay relevant in the late 20th century? Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're asking, what if the British Empire never collapsed? Join me as we explore just how the most powerful empire in history might have fared had it lasted into the modern day. Let's start with the basics. While we usually think of the fall of the British Empire as beginning at the end of the Second World War, the truth is that the seeds of the end of empire had already been sown long before the guns had even been fired in the Far East. The British had begun losing colonies as early as the early 20th century. By 1900, the independence of Japan had been secured after centuries of Tokugawa isolationism. In 1914, the First World War would see the Ottoman Empire collapse, giving rise to several independent states in the Middle East. Following the Russian Revolution of 1917, the Russians would also cease to be an empire, collapsing into the Soviet Union. The post-war period would then see the independence of Ireland and the creation of Israel, followed by India in 1947. This trend would then continue until the present day, until every former part of the British Empire has become fully independent. For our purposes today, let's imagine that none of this happens. Let's imagine that the British managed to hold on to every last piece of the imperial pie. How would such a thing happen? Well, the first and most important step is making sure that the Second World War ends differently. For the purposes of this scenario, the Americans will still drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing the Japanese surrender and ending the war in the Far East. However, with the German threat eliminated sooner by the Soviets, there will be no need for the US to remain in Europe, and the Yalta Conference will be unnecessary. With the Americans gone, the British will be able to reassert their dominance in Europe, preventing the creation of the European Union and NATO. Meanwhile, the Americans, feeling the effects of the post-war economic boom, will turn inwards. Without the stimulus of fighting a global war, the United States won't be as outwardly focused and instead will focus on domestic issues. In the meantime, the British will use their newfound dominance to reassert their authority over their former colonies. In India, the newly crowned Queen Elizabeth II will personally intervene, using her connection to the Indian royal family to convince the Indians to remain loyal to the crown. Similarly, in Africa, the British will stop the wave of decolonization, crushing rebellions in places like Kenya and South Africa. In Australia, the White Australia policy will remain in place, ensuring that the British Dominion remains ethnically pure. With the empire intact, the British government will now look outwards to expand the empire once more. Where will they go? Well, as the French will soon discover, the British love nothing more than a bit of North African sunshine, and so the British will head into the region, conquering the entirety of it and incorporating it into the empire. Egypt will become a province, while the Maghreb and the Sahel will become a new British colony. This will be the new frontier of the empire, which will be defended by the Royal Navy from attack by the growing superpower of the South, the Republic of South Africa. Meanwhile, the rest of the world will begin to change in ways both big and small. Without the impetus of the space race, the Americans will develop much more slowly, remaining a minor power on the global stage. The European Union will never be created, leaving France and Germany isolated and vulnerable. The end of the Cold War will see Russia collapse without the stimulus of competition from the West. Without European colonialism, Africa will develop along tribal lines, becoming a collection of hundreds of petty states. The growth of China will be stunted as the British blockade Chinese expansion into Southeast Asia. Canada will grow closer to the United States and will eventually be absorbed into the Union. Brazil, meanwhile, will become the dominant power in South America, crushing any attempts at communism in the continent. By the year 2000, the world is very different. Let's explore how, starting with the empire itself. The British Empire is the largest and most powerful entity in the world. It dominates global trade and is one of only two superpowers on Earth, alongside the resurgent Dutch Empire in the Pacific. Britain rules over around 1 billion people across 6 continents, and its culture, language, and values are followed by many millions more. In Europe, the British have used their post-war dominance to shape the continent in their own image. All of Europe, bar Finland, has been incorporated into the British Commonwealth with the British monarch as head of state. The British are also in the process of forcibly Anglicising the populations of their European colonies, especially Ireland, which they are forcibly Anglicising and Protestant. This process of Anglicisation will cause huge resentment among the Irish, leading to the formation of secret societies dedicated to the overthrow of the crown. In Africa, things are rather different. The British crushed all attempts at independence, maintaining control over their colonies through a combination of superior firepower and the manipulation of local rulers. The introduction of the white settlers in large numbers into the British Empire's African colonies will lead to large-scale conflicts with the local tribes, especially in places like Kenya and South Africa. These conflicts will be brutal and bloody, with the British using scorched earth tactics to put down any rebellion. The vast wealth of Africa will ensure that the continent remains vitally important to the British Empire, leading to increased immigration into the area. The British also encouraged the development of the region, building massive infrastructure projects to extract the region's vast resources for the benefit of the mother country. Australia and New Zealand remain loyal members of the British Commonwealth, although Australia will grow increasingly frustrated at British attempts to control its destiny. Tensions will eventually boil over and Australia will declare full independence, angering the British, who feel that their old dominion has betrayed them. The Australians will seek to form a closer relationship with the Americans, who will have grown into a regional power in their own right. And speaking of the Americans, while the Americans will be somewhat of a power in their own right, they will be dwarfed by the power of the British Empire, whose reach literally encompasses the entire globe. The British Empire will be a conservative and religious power, seeking to export Christianity to the wider world. They will see the growth of fundamentalist Christianity across the globe as part of a divine plan to bring the whole world under the dominion of God, King, and country. In reality, the British Empire did a lot of good during its time ruling over the world, but it also did a lot of bad. From the Opium Wars to the Mau Mau uprising, the empire was built on the backs of countless millions who died under British rule. And it's likely that if the empire were to somehow exist today, that this trend would continue. The British Empire would undoubtedly be one of the worst regimes in the world today, presiding over a system of global apartheid and presiding over a brutal system of global oppression. The end of the 20th century saw the rise of many great powers, from the Americans to the Russians to the Chinese. But the one power that arguably had the greatest impact on the course of the century was the British Empire. If the empire had never fallen, the world today would be a very different place. We hope you enjoyed this episode of What If? If you did, please do leave us a like and subscribe for more content. And as always, thank you for watching.